I trusted Marcus with everything, and that's exactly why it took me 3 years to notice the red light blinking behind his bookshelf. We'd been best friends since 6th grade, the kind of friendship where you don't knock before walking into each other's houses. His mom kept a spare key under the flower pot for me. My dad taught him how to change a tire. We spent more nights at each other's places than in our own beds, and nobody thought anything of it because that's just what we were. Inseparable. I was over at his house on a random Tuesday, sprawled on his bedroom floor while he sat at his desk editing some video for his YouTube channel, the one with maybe 200 subscribers, mostly gaming clips and reaction videos. I wasn't paying attention to the screen. I was scrolling my phone, half listening to him complain about a copyright strike. Then I glanced up because his editing software crashed, and in the half second before he minimized the window, I saw a thumbnail grid. Dozens of clips, all time-stamped, all labeled with dates going back years. One of them was labeled with my name. I sat up. What was that? What was what? He didn't even turn around. That folder. It had my name on it. Oh, that's nothing. Just old footage from when we used to film stupid stuff for the channel. He said it so easily, so naturally that I let it go. Because why wouldn't I? This was Marcus. We'd filmed hundreds of dumb videos together over the years. Skits, pranks, gaming streams. Of course, there'd be old footage with my name on it. I didn't think about it again for almost a month. Then I was at his house again, and he stepped out to grab food, and his laptop was open on the desk, screen unlocked, editing software still running in the background. I wasn't snooping. I was just sitting there bored, and my eyes drifted to the file browser docked on the side of the screen. Folders, hundreds of them, organized by year, then by month. I clicked one open before I even decided to. Video clips, not gaming clips, not skits, just me, sitting in my room, talking to no one, thinking I was alone. Me changing my shirt. Me on the phone with my girlfriend at the time, having a private conversation I never would have wanted recorded. Me asleep on his couch during a sleepover, the camera angle low, tucked into the corner of the room, where I never would have thought to look. My stomach dropped through the floor. I clicked another folder. More of the same. Months of it. Years of it, based on the dates. I heard the front door open downstairs, and I slammed the laptop shut so hard the desk shook, and I sat back down on the floor, exactly where I'd been, my heart going so fast I thought he'd be able to hear it from a hallway. He walked in with a bag of food and tossed me a burger like nothing in the world was wrong. And I took it with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and I smiled and said thanks, and inside I was screaming. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my own bed replaying every sleepover, every time I'd change clothes in his room, without thinking twice, every private conversation I'd had while he was supposedly out of earshot. I thought about all the times I told him things I'd never told anyone else, about my parents' divorce, about the anxiety I'd been too ashamed to bring to a therapist, about a girl I liked freshman year that I never had the guts to talk to. I wondered how much of that had a red light pointed at it. I needed to know how far back it went, and I needed proof, because if I confronted him without proof, he'd just talk his way out of it the way he talked his way out of everything. Marcus had a gift for that. He could make you feel crazy for doubting him. So I started paying attention. I noticed things I'd ignored for years because I never had a reason to look. The bookshelf in his room had a small gap between two hardcover books that never quite lined up right. The vent above his closet door was angled slightly downward toward the bed, which made no sense for airflow. There was a stuffed bear on his desk, faded and old, that he said was from when he was a kid, but the fabric on the left I looked too clean, too recent, like it had been replaced. I started sitting in different spots when I visited. I stopped talking about anything personal in his room. I started watching his face when I asked him questions, looking for the flicker of a lie. 3 weeks after I found the folders, I got him to leave the room again, told him I needed to use the bathroom, so he'd go make us drinks downstairs, and I went straight for the bear on the desk. I turned it over, found a seam along the base that had been re-sewn, and inside, tucked into the stuffing, was a tiny camera lens no bigger than a shirt button, wired to a battery pack and a micro SD card. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it putting it back together. I heard him coming up the stairs, and I shoved the bear back into position, sat down, picked my phone back up, and by the time he walked in with 2 sodas, I was staring at my screen like nothing had happened. He handed me a can and sat down at his desk, completely at ease, completely unaware that I now knew exactly what he was. That night I went home and didn't say a word to anyone. I needed more than a hidden camera in a teddy bear. I needed to know why. I needed to know what he'd done with 3 years of footage of me. And more than anything, I needed to know if I was the only one. I started going through his social media from a fake account, scrolling years back, looking for names of other people who'd spent a lot of time at his house. There was a kid named Tobias who used to be close with Marcus back in 8th grade before he suddenly stopped coming around. There was a girl named Priya who dated Marcus's older brother for a summer and then vanished from every photo after that. I found Tobias first. Took some digging, but he still lived 2 towns over. I messaged messaged him cold, told him I was a friend of Marcus's and needed to ask him something uncomfortable. He didn't respond for 2 days. When he finally did, all he wrote was, "Does he still have the bear?" My whole body went cold reading that. I met Tobias at a diner the following weekend. He looked older than his photos, tired in a way that didn't match his age. He told me he'd found a camera in Marcus's room back in 8th grade too, not in a bear. Back then it had been hidden in an alarm clock, and that when he confronted Marcus about it, Marcus had cried, apologized, said he'd delete everything, said it was a phase, said he was going through something. Tobias believed him. Tobias stayed friends with him for another year after that, because Marcus was so convincing, so apologetic, so good at making you feel like the bad guy for even suspecting him. Then I found a second camera, Tobias said, stirring his coffee without drinking it, in the smoke detector. That's when I left. Never told anyone why. Just said we drifted apart. Did you ever report it? He looked at me like I'd asked something naive. Report what? A camera pointed at a corner of a room in his own house. His parents would have said it was for security. Nobody would have believed a 14-year-old over a kid whose mom volunteers at the church and whose dad coaches Little League. I just left. That's all I could do. I asked him if he knew about anyone else. He hesitated for a long time before answering. Priya, he said. You should talk to Priya. Priya took even longer to find and even longer to convince to talk to me. When she finally agreed, it was over a video call, and she kept her camera off the entire time. Her voice was flat, controlled, the voice of someone who had rehearsed this story in her head so many times that the emotion had been worn smooth. She told me she dated Marcus's older brother, Elliot, the summer before college, and that she used to spend afternoons in Elliot's room while Marcus was supposedly at work. Except Marcus wasn't always at work. Sometimes he'd come home early and sit outside the door, and she'd catch him staring through the gap when it wasn't fully shut. She told Elliot. Elliot didn't believe her, said Marcus wouldn't do that, said she was imagining things. Then she found the footage, not on a camera in the room, on Marcus's laptop, left open at the kitchen table one afternoon while he went to the bathroom. Files with her name on them, months of them. She said she confronted him right there in the kitchen, and Marcus didn't even deny it. He just started crying, said he had a problem, said he needed help, said please don't tell Elliot, please don't tell my parents, I'll get help, I promise. And she believed him because what else do you do when someone is sobbing in front of you and begging? She never told Elliot. She broke up with him a month later, made up an excuse about college being too far, and never explained why. She said watching Marcus cry that day, and the way he immediately made it about protecting himself instead of about what he'd done to her, was the moment she understood exactly what kind of person he was. He's very good at being sorry, she told me, but he's never actually sorry. He's just sorry he got caught. I sat with that for a long time after the call ended. Two people years apart, both finding cameras, both confronting him, both getting the same performance of tears and promises, and both walking away instead of exposing him, because he made sure it would always look like their word against his, and his word came wrapped in charm, in tears, in a family that everyone in town respected. That's when I understood what I actually needed to do, not confront him privately, where he could cry his way out of it again. I needed proof so undeniable that there was no talking his way around it, and I needed witnesses. I needed to end the cycle instead of becoming the third name on a list that kept growing. I started visiting his house more often, not less, so nothing would seem different. I brought my backpack every time, and inside it I kept a small voice recorder my dad used for work meetings, running the entire time I was there. I started asking him questions I already knew the answers to, letting him talk about himself, about his channel, about the pressure of growing an audience, hoping he'd slip. He didn't slip in conversation. He was too careful for that, so I went back to the bear. The next time he left the room, I didn't just look at the camera. I pulled the micro SD card out and swapped it for a blank one I'd bought, praying he wouldn't check it before I could get the original copied. I shoved the real card into my pocket, put the bear back exactly as it was, sat back down, and waited for my heart rate to come down to something survivable. That night, at home, I plugged the card into my laptop with the door locked and my stomach already turning before a single file opened. There were hundreds of clips, not just recent ones, going back years, exactly like the folders I'd seen the first time. Me as a 14-year-old, in that same bedroom, at sleepovers I'd forgotten the exact dates of. Me at 16. Me from a few months ago. Private moments, private conversations, things that were never meant to be seen by anyone, cataloged and organized with a precision that made my skin crawl. He hadn't just been recording, he'd been curating. There were subfolders labeled by what was happening in each clip, sorted and tagged like he was building an archive. I found a folder with Tobias's name on it, a folder with Priya's name on it, and folders with names I didn't recognize at all. At least 4 other people, kids from our school, kids from his channel's small circle of collaborators, people who probably had no idea any of this existed. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat there with the weight of what I was holding, understanding that this wasn't a phase, wasn't a mistake, wasn't something that happened once and got out of hand. This was something he had built carefully over years, refining his methods every time someone caught him, learning from every close call how to hide it better. I copied everything onto 2 separate drives. I put the original card back in the bear 2 days later before he could notice it missing, because I needed him to have no idea I knew anything until I was ready. Then I needed to decide what ready actually meant. Going to the police with a memory card I'd pulled from his room, without permission, felt like it could backfire. Questions about how I got it, whether it was even admissible, whether his family's reputation would bury the whole thing before it went anywhere. I needed him caught in the act on camera, admitting what he'd done, in a way that couldn't be denied or cried away. I told Tobias and Priya what I'd found. Both of them went quiet on the call. Priya cried for the first time since I'd started talking to her. Tobias just said, "How many folders?" More than I want to say. "Then it's time," he said. It was time 3 years ago. We came up with a plan. I would go to his house one more time, wearing a hidden camera of my own, small, cheap, clipped inside my jacket collar, angled at his desk. I would bring up the folders directly, calmly, and let him think I only knew a fraction of what I actually knew, and let him talk. Tobias and Priya would be parked outside in Tobias's car, ready to come in if I needed backup, ready to be witnesses the second it mattered. I walked into his room that Friday evening with my heart hammering so hard I was sure he'd hear it. He was at his desk, editing as usual, and I sat down on his bed instead of the floor, which was different enough that he glanced over. "You good?" he asked. "I found the camera in the bear," I said. He didn't move for a second. Then he laughed, a short, disbelieving laugh, like I'd told a joke that didn't quite land. "What? The bear on your desk?" "I found the camera inside it. I know about the folders, Marcus. I know about the years of footage. I know about Tobias. I know about Priya." The color drained out of his face in real time. He set down his mouse very carefully, like he was buying himself seconds to think. "I don't know what you're talking about. I have footage from the card, Marcus. I pulled it 2 weeks ago." That was the moment his face cracked. Not into anger, into that same performance Priya had described, the tears rising almost on command, his hands coming up to cover his face. "I have a problem," he said, his voice breaking exactly the way she said it had for her. "I've been trying to stop. I swear, I've been trying. Please, you can't tell anyone. This would destroy me. This would destroy my family. You've been doing this for years. You did it to Tobias. You did it to Priya. You've probably done it to people I don't even know about yet. I'll delete everything. Right now. I'll delete it all in front of you." He reached for his laptop, hands shaking, and I realized in that moment that this was the same move he'd made every single time. Offer to delete it, cry, apologize, make himself the victim of his own compulsion, and let the other person's guilt about ruining his life do the rest of the work for him. "I already have copies," I said. "Deleting your version doesn't do anything anymore." His face changed again, the tears cutting off almost instantly, replaced by something colder. Something I'd never seen on him before. "You went through my stuff. You stole from me. You filmed me for 3 years without my knowledge. And you're mad that I took a memory card." He stood up fast enough that his chair rolled back and hit the wall. "Get out of my house. I'm not going anywhere until you understand what happens next." I pulled out my phone and texted Tobias one word: "Now." Marcus didn't know what that meant, but I watched the panic set in as he heard a car door outside, then another, then the front door opened downstairs, his mother's voice calling up, asking who was here. Tobias and Priya walked into that bedroom 4 minutes later, and I have never seen someone's face empty out the way Marcus's did when he saw both of them standing in his doorway at the same time, in the same room, for the first time in years. "You remember me," Tobias said. It wasn't a question. Marcus's mouth opened and nothing came out. Priya stepped further into the room, arms crossed, steady in a way she hadn't been on our call. "I want you to say it, out loud, to all 3 of us. Not an apology, the truth." He looked between the 3 of us, calculating, still searching for an angle, and for a second I thought he might actually try to talk his way out of it even now, even with 2 other victims standing in the room, as proof this wasn't a misunderstanding. But there was nowhere left to run the performance. Too many people knew too much. "I recorded you," he said, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "All of you, for years." "Why?" Priya said. Not a question this time either. A demand. He didn't have an answer that wasn't an excuse, and for once, nobody in the room was willing to accept an excuse in place of one. His mother appeared in the doorway behind us, having climbed the stairs after hearing raised voices, and her face went through disbelief, then horror, as Tobias calmly explained what we'd found, what Marcus had done, and for how long. I watched a woman who had made my sandwiches at every sleepover for 6 years age a decade in front of me. We went to the police that weekend, all 3 of us together, with the drives, with my recording of the confession, with Tobias and Priya's statements about the years before mine. It turned out neither of them had ever filed a report exactly like Marcus had counted on, but this time it was different. This time time there were 3 of us, 3 separate timelines, hundreds of files, and a recorded confession that made his usual performance impossible to sell to anyone with a badge. The investigation took months. More names surfaced from a footage than any of us expected. Kids from his channel's Discord who'd visited once or twice, a cousin who used to stay over during holidays. Every folder was another person who had trusted him and never known. Marcus was arrested in the spring. His channel disappeared within a week, along with every trace of the persona he'd built. The friendly gamer next door, the guy everyone thought was just a little awkward but harmless. I stopped hearing from people who used to be mutual friends, the ones who couldn't decide whose side to take and decided the safest thing was silence. Tobias and I stayed in touch. Priya moved out of state that summer, but she still texts sometimes, mostly just to check in, mostly just single lines that say more than they look like they do. Doing okay today. I always write back the same thing. Me too. I still think about the sleepovers, the years I spent trusting a room I now know was never actually private. I think about how long it took for the red light behind the bookshelf to register as anything other than background noise. I think about Tobias and Priya, both of whom tried to warn the world in their own quiet ways, and were met with disbelief dressed up as loyalty to a family everyone liked too much to question. But mostly I think about the moment his face changed in that room. Not when he was crying, not when he was performing regret, but the moment right after when he realized the performance wasn't going to work anymore. That was the first time in 3 years I ever saw something honest on his face. And it was the last time I ever had to wonder whether I was imagining things.